Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. This time I'm returning to my colour changing crystal ball table and I'm going to be making some fortune telling accessories that can be used to dress the table. Now I'm going to be making some tarot cards, rune stones and a little palmistry project. So enjoy. The starting material for my rune stones is going to be one of my favourite materials, and this is recycled food packaging. Any food that comes in a box, you can reuse the box. You get different colours on the insides, depends what it is. This happens to be part of a cereal box that is something that I'd been using for something else and I got a bit left over, so I'm going to use it for this. And I'm also going to use a single hole punch. Now this makes a 4mm hole. Now, the hole is the actual thing that these are supposed to make, not the bit that I'm saving, which is the actual bit that comes out. So you will have to probably make a lot more than you think you need because they don't always come out brilliant. So you have to pick and choose. And what I've got here is I've got a little pot with quite a few that I've already made. And this is my starting material. Once you've got all your dots, the first thing to do is to glue them together. And I'm using my trusty cocktail stick with a bit of glue to put some glue on one, and then I'm going to stick another one onto the top of it. Now this is fiddly work, but I do want my rune stones to be thicker than just one piece deep, so that's why I do this. And what I'm doing is I'm sticking the coloured side together. Once the glue had dried on my little rune stones, I gave them a coat of very pale grey paint, which is this one. It is incredibly pale when it dries, but I think it's going to work for my stones. Now the next stage is going to be to make a bag. I'm not going to worry too much about finishing the stones at this stage because they're going to be finished as part of a little scene. So not all the stones will be used and not all the stones will actually have runes drawn on them. Obviously you can, if you want to do a proper sort of setup where all the runes are laid out, go ahead and put on as many runes as you want. But I'm going to make life a bit easier for myself. So the next step is to make a bag. To make the bag for my runes, I'm going to be using a scrap of this light purple silk. This is actually silk, and as with most things when working in miniatures, natural fibres are better. However, saying that, I'm also going to be using a scrap of this polyester satin to make a mat. It's not going to be spread out flat, I want it to be folded, but I think I can use this quite successfully, and the runes will still show against it, especially once they've actually got their little runes marked on them in black. So this is how I'm going to do it. Now this is a no-sew technique, and some of it I'm going to be doing off camera, but I will explain what I've done, mostly because you really do not want to hear me swearing at my travel iron when I'm trying to hem the bag. What I've done to this point is I have, with a little bit of glue, hemmed one side of my piece of silk. This isn't the tidiest of things, but I've got a side which is better than the other one. This is actually the wrong side that you're seeing at the moment, because what I've then done is I have folded it over and I have glued along the two closed sides with my glue, and then I've set that using my travel iron. This is my desktop ironing station, by the way. It's just so that I've got something to protect my desk and to protect what I'm working on. Now, my next stage is to take this little bag that I formed and turn it right side out, because at the moment the right side is on the inside, and I'm going to use a cocktail stick and my tweezers to enable me to do this. And here is the little bag turned right side out. As you can see, it's a nice little bag, and that is going to work quite well with my runestones. You could put quite a selection of runestones in there if I don't keep dropping it. This is rather slippery, being silk, and pull them out as you wanted. Now, if you wanted to, you could get a fine needle and a single piece of thread, and you could actually add a drawstring to the top of that bag. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to be sticking it into place, and for that purpose I've got a little piece of cardstock. It's my 160 GSM cardstock that I use for printing things, and I'm going to put underneath the white cloth just to give the piece a little bit of support. To prepare my cloth, what I did was I used some glue to make a square, very roughly, on the reverse of the satin fabric, and I let that dry. I then cut out the square on the glue. Now what this does is it stops it from fraying. All that I've then done is I've used a paint pen, and I've just done a little line around it just to give it a little bit of depth and a bit more detail than it just being plain white. So I have glued the cloth around my little supporting piece of cardstock. Now, I'm actually using this because it does make it easier just to arrange the pieces, and then this piece, my little bag, is going to be glued onto there in a moment, and then I'm going to arrange the actual runestones spilling out. But I'm not going to arrange the runestones until I have attached everything to my table. There it is. So that is the next step. This is going to fit on here, something like that. And what I will do is any glue marks will get covered up by the runestones as I arrange them. So I think I'm going to glue this into place next, and then attach that. And so here we have in place the cloth and the bag, and I'm ready to start going with the runestones. Now I'm going to begin with my little pot of runestones by picking some of the less perfect ones and starting to glue those together. So we'll start off with these. And what I want to do is I want to take a little bit of glue and I want to glue them over each other and onto the sides of each other, like so. I should probably move my little ironing board, but you get the idea. I'm going to make a little pile which are going to be the bulk of what is in there. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to add to these by taking a runestone and making a mass like so. Hopefully without gluing them all to me, but it happens when you're using such small pieces. I'm going to continue doing that until I've got a piece of maybe about 10 or so of these. Now, I thought I'd film some of this, but I haven't. What I've done is I stuck my runes together and then I stuck them into the bag. So if you actually look, you can see slight outlines through the bag of the runes, and obviously they're spilling out. And the ones that are spilling out, I have drawn some runes on using my fine pen. Now you could use a cocktail stick and some paint, a pin or a piece of wire to do these on, but I happen to have a pen that is just about fine enough to be able to do it. And so my runes are now in place on my fortune telling table. Now I was just clearing up and I realised that I hadn't pointed out that to get the rune symbols that I used on these stones, I googled rune meanings, and I found a couple of good sites that actually show you all the sort of standard runes. I believe there's 24 of them in the standard runic alphabet, and that's where I got my runes from. Now for the tarot cards, I've chosen to make a replica of a deck that I actually own. Now this is a deck that was a birthday present from a very good friend a good number of years ago. And it's actually a famous deck because this is the deck that is used in the James Bond film Live and Let Die. And it's most famous for the Lovers card. But because it is a deck that is important to me, I wanted to replicate it rather than using one of the printables that are available on the internet. And so that's taken me quite some time, a lot of scanning, some work in Photoshop that wasn't done by me. I have my Photoshop genie who put my box back together, as you can see on this printout that I've got here. And what I've got on my little printed out sheet here is the box in 2 different sizes. That is because I'm going to use the smaller box in my Witch's Cottage project. I've got 3 of the cards that I've scanned and reduced them in size, and I've got a lot of the back of the card. And actually, if I get that card back, you can see that my printer doesn't print very good when it comes to red, so they're more purple, but I quite like it, so I'm not worrying about it. Now I've done it like this because I want to make it look like these have been left mid-reading, and so I'm going to have 3 cards laid out, and then I'm going to have a pile that just the backs are going to be visible. Because this is going to be a stationary piece, I don't need to worry about all the cards I have in the front because I'm going to glue some of the backs together to make a rough pile. And obviously these are going to be glued down as the front's showing. So that's what I've done, and I've printed this out, and now I've got to get cutting. Now the cutting out has actually taken quite a while, and I've got here my 3 cards that are going to be visible and my little pile of backs that I'm going to glue together in a moment. Now I have already made up the box. Now I made up the box a little bit in advance because I wanted to make sure that the pile of cards I'd got actually looked like it might go into the box. I'm going to have the box left open on the desk. Now you may notice that even though I printed on white card, the inside of the box looks old. The inside of my box looks old because it is. What I did is I coloured the wrong side with a distress marker in antique linen. You could use anything, any sort of distressing technique. I just happen to have that to hand. And so it makes the box look a bit more battered and more loved, shall we say. So next thing is to start gluing again. I have stuck together my backs, and I've added some aging to both those and to the edges of my actual cards that I'm going to have visible. Now it's time to actually transfer these onto the fortune telling table, and all I did to actually stick the pieces into place was I just used a little bit of glue on the back of each piece and fasten them down to my table. Simple as that. I just think that it's now looking far more used and far more suitable to go into my room. For the last piece I'm going to do today, I'm going to make a palmistry hand. Now I'm using a spare arm. This is the arm of a pound shop plastic doll. A doll that was smaller than standard doll size, so smaller than 1/6, but bigger than 1/12. And these arms, because I had a couple of them, were left over from an Halloween project a good number of years ago. But you know what it's like, you keep these things. And I decided that I could turn it into a palmistry hand. So to start off with, I've got a hand. Now I'm going to paint the hand with some white acrylic paint, and I'm going to make a base for it. But that's the starting point, is the hand. The hand has been given 2 coats of white paint, and I've also made a little base for it to stand on. Obviously I've got to cut it off to turn it into a display piece, and I've made a little stand out of some punched card circles. I've got, I think the biggest one is about 15mm, and the smaller one is closer to 5. And all I've done is I've layered a couple up of each size, and then I've painted over it, just so that I've got something to stick the hand to. Now I've got to get my knife out, and I'm going to cut the hand from the rest of the arm. And here we have my finished little palmistry hand. I say finished, I think I'm going to give it a coat of gloss Mod Podge, because I want it to have that sort of shiny ceramic look, and yeah, then I'll be happy with it. I couldn't find my really fine paint pen, the black one, so I've used my black, my actual black ink pen to do some lines on here, but I think that's going to look good. I'm not sure if it's actually going to live on the fortune teller's table, or if I will be putting it elsewhere in the room, but I'm quite happy with that little piece. And here we have my completed dressed fortune teller's table, complete with rune stones, tarot cards and a palmistry hand. I have also added a little candle that I made in a previous video, just to add a little more detail to the piece. As I said, I may decide to put the palmistry hand elsewhere in the room, because it does look a little bit out of place, but we shall see. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe, and consider following the Gothic Unicorn over on Facebook, where we post progress reports and the things that never make it to videos. And until the next video, bye!